Good evening from the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, and welcome to our night-long coverage of the return to Earth of three of the crew members of the station who have been on board for the past 6 months. It is homecoming day for those three crew members, part of the Expedition 4647 crew. The off-going International Space Station Commander Tim Kopra of NASA, the Soyuz commander for tonight's landing, Yuri Malenchenko, the veteran Russian cosmonaut, and Tim Peake, the European Space Agency astronaut, the first British astronaut to fly aboard the International Space Station, the second British astronaut in the history of human spaceflight. They are gearing up to say farewell to the other three crew members who will remain on board as part of the Expedition 48 crew. Expedition 48 to begin in earnest and officially at the time that the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft undocks from the Earth-facing port of the Rassvet module, which is attached to the Zarya module of the International Space Station. Here in the flight control room, a shift handover is about to begin with the team that will be on console to supervise the undocking of the Soyuz from the International Space Station and to begin to oversee the early activities of the remaining three crew members on board the complex. On the very far right of your screen, at the top of your screen, is Flight Director Courtney McMillan. She is coming on shift to supervise tonight's activities. Seated to her right in the light-colored shirt is off-going Flight Director Brian Smith. At the bottom of your screen is astronaut Jim Kelly, Vegas Kelly, who will be talking to the crew on board the International Space Station throughout the course of the evening. He will be joined later on by veteran astronaut Sonny Williams, now a member of the Commercial Crew Program astronaut cadre, who is a Soyuz systems expert through her time on board the International Space Station and her launches and landings in Soyuz spacecraft. She'll be a second set of eyes here in the flight control room as operations begin in earnest with the Soyuz vehicle all the way down to the landing site in Kazakhstan. The three returning crew members tonight, as we mentioned, Malenchenko, Peake, and Kopra, they have had a very eventful 6 months on board the International Space Station. At the time of their landing, which is scheduled just under 7 hours from now, on the steppe of Kazakhstan to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan, they will have completed 186 days in space and aboard the space station. They will have completed 2,976 orbits of the Earth in a mission totaling 78.7 million statute miles. Yuri Malenchenko's 186 days in space on these two increments, Expedition 4647, will have brought to a aggregate total of 828 days in space on 6 flights for Malenchenko, placing him second on the all-time list for most days in space by a human being, behind his fellow Russian cosmonaut Gennady Padalka, who has logged 879 days in space on 5 flights. Tim Kopra, who served as the Expedition 47 commander, will have logged, of course, 186 days in space on his 2 increments and has racked up now a total of 244 days in space on his 2 flights away from the planet. And Tim Peake, of course, in this, his first flight into space, a 186-day mission total for his singular flight in space. During their time on orbit, this 186 days that began with their launch last December 15th from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, the 3 returning crew members saw the arrival of 5 visiting vehicles, 2 Russian Progress resupply ships, 1 SpaceX Dragon cargo ship with the Bigelow Expandable Activity Module on board, 1 orbital ATK Cygnus resupply ship that just undocked from the International Space Station this past Tuesday and is in the home stretch of a free flight and scientific research opportunity before it is ultimately deorbited on June 22nd. They also saw the arrival of 1 Soyuz crew vehicle, the TMA-20M, with Alexei Ovchinin, Alex Skropochka, and Jeff Williams aboard. Williams, the new commander of the International Space Station, having taken over command of the station early Friday morning from Tim Kopra. The three crew members remaining on board after tonight's undocking, Ovchinin, Skorpochka, and Williams, will soon be joined by another trio of crew members who are in the final stages of their training for their launch on the new Soyuz MS, or Modified Systems 01 vehicle. Kate Rubins of NASA on the left. In the middle, Anatoly Ivanishin, and on the right, Takoya Onishi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. They will be heading down to the Baikonur Cosmodrome on Friday, June 24th for final pre-launch training that will lead to their launch on July 7th Baikonur time, the night of July 6th U.S. time, on that new MS-01 vehicle for basically a shakedown flight of a two-day rendezvous that will lead to their docking to the International Space Station on July the 9th. Moscow time, the very late hours of July 8th U.S. time. But the focus of attention tonight is the return of Kopra, Peak, and Malenchenko. Just a few minutes from now, the 6 crew members on board will have an opportunity to gather in the vestibule of the Rosviet module with the hatch open to Rosviet, Malenchenko having completed communications checks with the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov earlier this evening. Once they say farewell to one another, the 3 returning crew members will move inside the Rosviet module, close the hatch, and will conduct a series of leak checks that will lead up to the undocking of the Soyuz vehicle itself. Undocking is scheduled at 12:52 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time. That will follow the opening of the hooks that have held the Soyuz vehicle to the Rosviet module since its arrival back on December 15th. With the hooks open, springs on both sides of the docking interface will push off against one another, and physical separation will occur. That will be followed by a pair of separation burns by the Soyuz to begin to phase away from the International Space Station, setting it up for the start of a deorbit burn, a 4-minute, 37-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz engines. That will occur at 3:22 a.m. Central Time, precisely 3:22 and 7 seconds. Again, a 4-minute, 37-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz engines to enable the Soyuz to begin to drop out of orbit and head into the Earth's atmosphere. Atmospheric entry will create a plasma environment around the spacecraft with temperatures rising to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. But before that happens, the 3 sections of the Soyuz will separate from one another pyrotechnically. That will expose the center section, or the descent module, and the heat shield that will repel that high plasma trail and heat as the Soyuz begins to make its way into the Earth's atmosphere. Finally, the command to open up the parachutes will be given at exactly 4 a.m. Central Time, and from that point on, the Soyuz will make its way toward the landing site about 90 miles to the southeast of Zhezkazgan, with touchdown expected at 4:14 and 39 seconds a.m. Central Time, which will be 3:14 p.m. at the landing site in Kazakhstan, about 6 hours and 7 minutes before local sunset in south-central Kazakhstan. In Kazakhstan, in the town of Karaganda, which is to the northwest of the landing site, about 285 miles to the northwest of the landing site, a combined NASA European Space Agency team is joining the Russian Search and Recovery Forces, Rosaviatsa, preparing to make their way from their hotel to the Karaganda airport to begin boarding helicopters later in a few hours that will take them down to the landing site. As you can see in this map, a total of 12 Russian Mi-8 helicopters will be dispatched directly from Karaganda to the landing site to the southeast of Zhezkazgan. One of those helicopters actually will stop in Zhezkazgan for refueling before making its way toward the landing site. 2 other helicopters will fly further to the south west to that blue shaded area, which is the ballistic landing region, more near the launch site of the Baikonur Cosmodrome, where the helicopters will be poised in the unlikely event a problem would cause the Soyuz to land well short of its intended landing target. 2 other helicopters will be staged at the midpoint between the ballistic landing region and the prime landing site, just in case they're needed to join in the recovery of the crew for any event that would bring them to that midpoint for a touchdown. But the prime landing site is where the focus of attention will be. Again, 8 Mi-8 helicopters will be dispatched from Karaganda to the landing site to join 2 Antonov fixed-wing aircraft, one of which serves as the command and control flying aircraft, relaying data and voice and instrumentation telemetry from the Soyuz spacecraft back to the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. That Antonov fixed-wing aircraft fleet will be joined on the ground by 4 all-terrain vehicles that will be in place to bring the crew from the medical tent that will be set up near the Soyuz spacecraft after the crew is extracted back to their respective helicopters to fly the crew back from the landing site to Karaganda, where the staging of this landing operation this evening is taking place. The weather at the landing site should be ideal. Just a few clouds at 10,000 feet, scattered clouds at 25,000 feet, winds out of the northwest about 11 knots, and a temperature at landing time expected to be close to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Can't get much better than that, but landings in June are always one of the easier landing operations from a climatological standpoint for the search and recovery forces, which tonight, of course, joined by both NASA and ESA personnel. This morning in the Japanese Kibo module aboard the International Space Station, the 6 crew members had an opportunity to gather for the traditional change of command ceremony, where, in this case, the off-going Expedition 47 commander, Tim Kopra, handed command of the station to Jeff Williams, the NASA astronaut, 2 Army aviators handing command to one another. For Williams, he assumed command of the station for the 2nd time in his long career. Let's take a look at that change of command ceremony.
Good morning from the International Space Station. Today is a formal event. This is the formal transfer of authority and responsibility of the International Space Station onboard operations from myself, Tim Kopra, to Jeff Williams. It's also an opportunity for us to give our thanks to an incredible international team that has allowed us to do our job up here and to advance the exploration of humans in space. We've been so privileged to work here on board with a huge variety of science experiments that we know are going to be a stepping stone for human exploration. And we've demonstrated, both from the ground and from the crew on board, together we've demonstrated that we have a world-class international laboratory. We've also demonstrated that we can sustain this station. We've docked, we actually captured and docked and then released a Cygnus vehicle, a Dragon vehicle. We currently have 2 Progress vehicles docked to our space station. Through the help of the ground teams and this great crew, we've been able to maintain the station in top working order so that we can continue our experiments on board and our efforts to advance the state of technology. We've had technology demonstrations where we've launched satellites. We have an inflatable module, the first of its kind here, docked to space station. And so it's been a privilege for all of us to be able to participate in all of these different activities on board space station. Personally, I'd like to say that it's been a tremendous honor to serve with this crew, with Jeff, Tim, Yuri, Alexei, and Oleg. I can't think of a better group of people to spend time with in space and to work with. And I'm very, very grateful for that opportunity. I'd also like to thank the families. The families that are back home have to endure the fact that we're not there to help and through their tremendous support, it keeps us in a good state of mind so that we can do our job and what we consider to be a very important job here on Space Station. Bill Shepard, who is the first commander of the International Space Station, brought a bell with him, and this is a Navy tradition that signifies the changing of the watch. And this is a tradition that's been part of the Navy and with ships at sea as long as there have been ships at sea. And we would like to continue this tradition, ironically, I think, because both Jeff and I are former Army officers, and we'd like to continue this tradition of ringing the bell to demonstrate the changing of the watch, and in this case, the change of command from myself to Jeff Williams. And with that, Jeff, congratulations. You're now the commander of the International Space Station.
Thank you. Thank you.
And finally, I'd like to say that I know, Jeff, that the station is in great hands, and I'm proud to be able to pass off this command to you today.
Thank you very much, Tim. Great words. I would only echo everything you said in terms of thanks to the ground teams around the world, as well as the family and our friends that support us so well up here. I'd also like to say a special congratulations to Yuri, to Tim, and to Tim for a successful stay on the International Space Station. You've made our stay so far, Alexei, Oleg, and I, our stay extremely productive and rewarding. And I've always said that the number one personal objective that all of us should have is
ceremony from this morning. Now you're looking live in the Rosviet module's vestibule. Yuri Malenchenko on the left, Tim Kopra in the center, Tim Peake of the European Space Agency on the right, as they gather to say farewell to Jeff Williams, Oleg Skoropochka, and Alexei Ovchinin. Final farewells and handshakes all the way around before they make their way through that hatchway behind Peake into the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft. Kopra first, followed by Peake, as we are about to lose our signal through the tracking and data relay satellite system. Some bonus KU coverage now as Malenchenko offers a final wave and a farewell. The crew, once inside the Soyuz, will begin the process of closing the hatch. Once the hatch is closed, they will transfer the Soyuz vehicle from ISS provided power to autonomous power through the remainder of the Soyuz's time through undocking and its return to Earth. And you see at the hatchway Oleg Skoropochka and Alexei Ovchinin in the foreground as they prepare to close the hatch. There will be leak checks conducted on both sides of the docking interface between the hatchway for the Soyuz and the International Space Station before that vestibule is depressurized down to vacuum, setting the stage for the actual undocking of the Soyuz from Rosviet that is scheduled 3 hours and 19 minutes from now.
Видим, приступаете к работе. Да, принято. Там Олег пусть повнимательнее смотрит резинки, так чтобы был чистый, ребят, как обычно. Да, стыки протерли, все хорошо, без замечаний. Принято.
And the hatch to the Soyuz TMA-19M closed at 9:34 p.m. Central Time.
Has been done already. Copy.
Skrzydłowska will now close the hatch to the Rosviet module, make sure it's secure. And at that point, the crews on both sides of the hatch interface will begin a series of leak checks over the next 90 minutes or so. The Rosviet hatch closed at 9:35, so the hatches are now closed between the two spacecraft. Once the crew conducts the leak checks and has transferred the Soyuz to autonomous power, the three departing crew members, Kopra, Peak, and Malenchenko, will begin to suit up in their Russian Sokol launch and entry suits and conduct systems checks on those suits to make sure that they are leak-free. Malenchenko, of course, is the Soyuz commander with the call sign of Agat that you will hear once the Soyuz...
Agat, this is Moscow.
And you just heard that call sign of Agat being called up from the Russian flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, outside of Moscow. That is Malenchenko's call sign for his Soyuz vehicle. Malenchenko will be in the center seat of the descent module, the center module of the three-sectioned Soyuz spacecraft. The upper section, the orbital module, and the lower section, which is the instrumentation and propulsion module, will pyrotechnically separate once the Soyuz has begun its descent from orbit following the deorbit burn itself.
Yes, that's correct. And we can see you.
To Malenchenko's left in the descent module will be Tim Kopra, operating as board engineer number 1, as he did for launch 186 days ago. And to Malenchenko's right will be European Space Agency astronaut Tim Peak, serving as board engineer number 2.
And hatch cover closed.
So again, the departing crew members, Malenchenko, Kopra, and Peak, had an opportunity to say farewell to Williams, Skrzydłowska, and Ovchinin just a few minutes ago. Final handshakes before they made their way inside their Soyuz spacecraft, with the Soyuz hatch closed at 9:34 p.m. Central Time, 10:34 p.m. Eastern Time. The Rosviet hatch closing 1 minute after that.
Okay. Okay. Так, страница 86.
Okay, page 86.
Выбираем ССВП.
Selected. And selecting SSVP.
Набираем команду D7.
And command D7. Send in the command, and we have SSVP.
So the video now taken down inside the vestibule of the Rosviet module. You are now looking outside from a truss camera on the International Space Station. In the center of your screen, that is the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft attached to the Earth-facing port of the Rosviet module. And on the right is the Progress 62 cargo craft that will undock on July 1st from the Piers docking compartment and be flown out to a distance of several hundred feet away from that docking port, and then be manually flown back by Oleg Skrzydłowska and Alexei Ovchinin to test a new telerobotically operated rendezvous system that was installed in the Progress following its initial arrival. That undock, redock activity on Friday, July 1st will be televised and broadcast on NASA television.
And executed. And now as PGS format.
Есть формат SPGS.
We have
Again, the departing crew Tim Kopra, Tim Peake, Yuri Malenchenko aboard the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft. Hatches having closed just about 5 minutes ago. The crew in the process of working the procedures to transfer the Soyuz to autonomous power.
Manual valve closed.
Following that activity, the crew will depressurize the vestibule interface between the Soyuz and the Rassvet module and perform leak checks, as will the 3 crew members on board the International Space Station on their side of the docking interface at Rassvet. The departing crew will take some water salt supplements. They'll don biomedical belts, and then they'll put their Sokol launch and entry suits on in preparation for undocking. That is scheduled 3 hours, 12 minutes from now. The undocking to take place at 12:52 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time.
A2 is illuminated. O2, PPO2 is 142. Copy. PPA 86 is...
And high definition view from the HDEV, the high definition external viewer camera on the International Space Station. Again, in the foreground, that is the Progress 62 cargo craft, and the background is the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft that now houses the 3 departing crew members, Tim Kopra, Tim Peake, and Yuri Malenchenko, as they begin their pre-undocking procedures, the transfer of the Soyuz to autonomous power, the depressurization of the vestibule at the docking interface between the Soyuz and Rassvet, the module to which the Soyuz has been attached since December 15th of last year.
And the valve KKT is open. Tunnel control valve. SRBO hatch closing.
There is a view from a balcony camera looking at the front screen of the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, where Russian flight controllers, of course, will be in charge of tonight's activities, the undocking and the monitoring of the Soyuz as it descends from orbit to its landing site about 90 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. The recovery teams, NASA, European Space Agency, and Rosaviatsa, the Russian search and recovery forces, along with RSC Energia technical personnel, will be leaving their respective hotels in Karaganda soon to make their way to the Karaganda airport and begin to board helicopters to begin the transit down to the landing site from the staging city in Karaganda. Once the crew has been extracted from the Soyuz at the landing site and has an opportunity to get their land legs back, if you will, after a half a year in space, they'll be brought into a nearby inflatable medical tent for tests before they put on more comfortable clothing, getting out of those Sokol launch and entry suits, putting on flight suits. They'll reboard 3 helicopters for a 2-hour flight back to Karaganda, where there'll be a short welcoming ceremony before the crew splits up. Tim Kopra and Tim Peake will board a NASA aircraft in Karaganda and fly from Karaganda to Bodo, Norway, where they'll split up, Tim Peake boarding a European Space Agency aircraft to fly back to Cologne, Germany. Kopra will continue on back to Houston. Yuri Malenchenko will board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft for the flight back to Chkalovsky Airfield outside of Star City on the outskirts of Moscow, his home and training base for his flights into space. The International Space Station is currently flying 254 miles above the Earth, just off the northeast coast of the Japanese island chain. Station systems functioning well. Jeff Williams, the new commander of the International Space Station, Expedition 48, soon to begin. The formal demarcation point for the end of Expedition 47 and the beginning of Expedition 48 comes at the time of undocking, which is 3 hours and 7 minutes from now at 12:52 a.m. Central Time. Williams, Oleg Skripochka, and Alexei Ovchinin, Williams' two Russian cosmonaut colleagues, will be a three-man crew for 3 weeks during this so-called indirect handover period, awaiting the arrival of the next trio of residents to be launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan to the International Space Station. Kate Rubins of NASA on the left, Anatoly Ivanishin in the middle, Takuya Onishi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency on the right. They are scheduled to launch aboard the new modified systems Soyuz spacecraft, the MS-01 spacecraft, on the morning of July 7th from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. That's local time. It'll be the night of July 6th here in the United States for a two-day rendezvous, a deliberate two-day rendezvous to the space station to check out the modified Soyuz systems, basically a shakedown flight that will bring them to a docking to the International Space Station on July 9th.
In work. I can see PBK switch and F3 command generated, and we have indicator illuminated. Now F4 command executed, and indicator is not illuminated. Copy. Going to BO.
Юрий Иванович, первый замер на 05:50:00 будем делать.
Yuri, and first measurement is 05:50:00.
Верно.
Copy.
Еще 2 минуты.
We have 2 more minutes to go.
Юрий Иванович, значит, уставки СУ, уставки на стыковку записаны, все нормально. Приняли. Вот так, ну и параллельно с замером можете скафандры одевать. Не забудьте медпояса и кентавры.
So please continue with the measurements. And actually we are already in our Centaur suits, and we have our biomed harnesses on.
Yuri Malenchenko reporting back to flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center that he and his crewmates, Tim Kopra and Tim Peake, are already beginning the process of suiting up with all of their biomedical instrumentation and their Russian Sokol launch and entry suits. The crew will activate an atmosphere purification unit in the Soyuz, and then will begin to make their way into their respective seats. Again, Malenchenko, as the Soyuz commander, will occupy the center seat in the descent module, the centermost section of the 3-section Soyuz spacecraft. To his left will be Tim Kopra, board engineer number 1, and to Malenchenko's right for entry, as was the case for launch 186 days ago, will be Tim Peake of the European Space Agency, serving as board engineer number 2. So to recap, the departing crew is now aboard the Soyuz. Hatches were closed at 9:34 p.m. Central Time. The Soyuz hatch was closed at 9:34. The Rassvet hatch was closed 1 minute later. Leak checks will begin shortly to ensure that there is a tight leak-free environment at that docking interface before the vestibule is depressurized in advance of undocking of the Soyuz from the International Space Station, and the formal end to Expedition 47, the formal beginning of Expedition 48. So with that, we'll wrap up our first broadcast of the evening with just a programming note. We'll be back on the air at 12:30 a.m. Central Time, 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time, with our undocking coverage, the undocking of the Soyuz from the International Space Station, scheduled at 12:52 a.m. Central, 1:52 a.m. Eastern Time, to send Malenchenko, Peake, and Kopra away from the station and the beginning of their journey home to wrap up a half a year in space. Thanks for joining us for our hatch closure broadcast. We'll see you in a few hours at 12:30 a.m. Central Time, 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time. This is Mission Control Houston.